There we go.
No, there we go. Very nice. Very good. Okay, good morning, everybody, or good evening, or whatever you are. Good afternoon. Lots of different people in lots of different places. Nice to see you all. So as Emily said, yes, my name is Andrew, teacher trainer here at National Geographic Learning in Taipei at the moment. As Emily mentioned, I'm working in education a long, long time, as you can see. I'm not the youngest person around, but hopefully I can share some of that experience with you in teaching, especially what we're talking about today with projects, okay? And just a little fun fact, I like to include these every now and then. I've worked in education for a long, long time, but I also used to work many, many, many years ago in the fast food industry. And I also worked 2 summers as a beekeeper. Okay, so one of my father's friends was a beekeeper, so I worked with bees for a couple of summers when I was at university. So there's a couple of fun facts about me to get started for today. Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to look at projects for young learners. Now, here it says young learners. We're actually going to be talking today about anyone really from 3 years old up to about 12 years old. Most of the ideas, though, you could apply to students who are a little bit older, like teenagers. But we're going to be focusing on examples today that come from young learner or very young learner programs, okay? We're also going to talk a little bit about, because of the current state of the world, a little bit about the idea that we're not just doing things face-to-face anymore. We're really teaching projects online, offline, lots of different places in between, blended classes, asynchronous learning, lots of different things at the moment, right? So we'll talk a little bit about how we can adapt projects to those different environments that we're now encountering in our education, right? So hopefully we'll learn some things about that as we go along today. Okay, very good. So first, let's start with why, what are projects, right? So I've given a very simple kind of idea of projects here. A project is something that involves multi-skill activities, okay? They're not just about one skill. For example, coloring things, right? A coloring page is really just about coloring things, right? A project is a bit more than that, right? The activities have some sort of outcome from them. There is some sort of result or end point to a project, right? When we know it is finished, right? And that outcome displays some kind of learning. So as you can see here in this particular photo, which comes from the Our World program, on the right-hand side here on the page, it says, now I can. And by completing this particular project, the student is showing that they can do these different things by talking about inventions and describing inventions and talking about favorites and things. Now they're doing it through talking about superheroes and superpowers, but they're using the same kind of grammar and language that we would need for these other areas as well. Okay, very good. If I see 1 or 2 people having trouble with sound, just check the sound settings at your end. And if you still have trouble, try logging out and coming back. Sometimes that fixes sound issues there. So Diana and others, if you have trouble with that, please let us know in the chat box, okay? Good. Okay, so now why do we use projects? What's the point of using projects? They're a tool for developing a lot of different skills, including the 4 C's. Now, in 21st century learning, we talk about the 4 C's. What are the 4 C's? In the chat box, can you give me 1 or more of what I mean by the 4 C's? What are the 4 C's? Creativity, there's 1. Okay, thank you, Bernardo. Creativity is 1. Critical thinking, thank you, Evelyn. Okay, critical thinking, okay. I can't spell, that's not a G, that's a thinking, okay. Good, collaboration, that's another one, good. And 1 more. 1 more, oh, there we go. Gregolin's got it, communication. Sorry, people have interesting names. Sorry, I'm trying to get all the names right here. So communication, yeah. So creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, communication. Those are the 4 C's that we often talk about in terms of today's kind of learning, 21st century learning, okay? So projects can develop all of those things, okay? They're also really, really good for assessment, okay? You can use a project for summative assessment. You can put it at the end of a unit, for example, and you can use that to let students show you what they have learned through the entire unit. You can also use them for formative assessment. So as we're going through, maybe we get the students to do a small project, and then we identify from their project what things they can do, but also importantly, what things they can't do. And then we know, so that means I still need to teach those things to the students to make sure they're at the level I want them to be, okay? So remember, formative assessment is always about identifying things I need to teach my learners still, as well as where they're on track, right? So these are the sorts of things that we can use projects for as well with assessment, okay? Great. They're also good variety for learners. They get the students out of the books, maybe, if you're doing a very book-focused class, and get the students maybe hands-on if you don't have a lot of those activities in your class, okay? And also students usually like to do projects, right? They usually like to get involved in the process of completing something with, maybe even if it's by themselves or if it's with others, they like getting involved in that kind of area, right? And project kind of work. So it's usually very stimulating for the students as well. Okay, great. Now, I said at the beginning, I said, we're in a little bit of a different environment. We all know that. Can we still do projects? Okay, and if it's not face-to-face, do they still work? Now, my answer to that is yes, right? Yes, we can, okay? What we just have to do, though, is we have to adapt things a little bit. And often the students are okay with it. Sometimes it's really the teacher. We need to adapt to the new environment and figure out how to make a project work for the students. The students can still do the work, okay? It's no matter where they're sitting. It's a question of, as teachers, can we manage the project? Can we get the project set up, organized, modeled effectively for the students so they know what to do and able to assess the students as they're going with the project, okay? Because the learning value is still there in a project for the students. It's more about our side. Can we adapt to what we need to do for projects in a new environment, okay? So today, when we're thinking about this, a lot of the points I'll make, starting on the next slide, is really about how do we as teachers need to maybe change what we do a little bit so that the students can still be successful with projects, okay? So the onus is on us, okay? Very good. Okay, so I'm going to talk about 4 areas today. This is kind of our agenda for going through what we're going to look at. The first one is we'll look at multiple stages and group work. Okay, how do we manage projects around those kinds of ideas? Second is substituting different materials into projects. Okay, the third one is process and product. Okay, I'll talk about what that means a little more soon. And finally, because we're in language teaching for National Geographic Learning, then we're always wanting to help use projects as a vehicle to help the students practice more language. Okay, it's going to be something we need to consider as well. Okay, so these are the 4 things we're going to look at. We'll take about 10 minutes on each of them, and we'll go through an example project on each of them as well, so that you can see how they go. And I've got questions for you to contribute to, so we can all learn together as we go through these different stages. Okay, so let's get into it. So the first one is multiple stages in group work. Okay, and what I mean here is if I've got a project in multiple stages, most projects, almost all projects, can and should be broken up into stages, okay? We should take a larger project and make it into little pieces that we build up to create the final thing that we're doing, okay? Now, why is that a good idea? With the younger students, and let me define what I mean here. So maybe I'm talking like students who are maybe like 3 to 7 years old, right? If I'm talking that kind of age range, why would I want to break a project up into smaller pieces? Okay, maybe the whole project might take 40 minutes to do. Why might I want to break that up into like 5 or 10-minute blocks with my students? So in the chat box, does anyone have any ideas why, for these kind of younger age students, I might want to break a project up into pieces? Okay, what do you think? I'm watching the chat box for your answers. So it's manageable, so they can concentrate better. Okay, so it's about concentration maybe. Okay. Attention span, that's a good one. We'll just make these notes as we go, right? It might make it faster to get done. Yeah, it might be more efficient. Let's use that word, right? It might be more efficient to do it that way. Less confusion, that's good. Okay, so more understanding, less confusion. Make it achievable. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, stages might be more achievable that way. To keep them motivated, that's a good one. Keep motivated, right? Yeah, these are great reasons, right? Because for these younger kinds of students, yeah, they don't get tired. Go step by step. Yeah, that's a good one. I'm going to write that one down too. Step by step. And actually, that's usually the step by step is usually the primary reason we do it with younger students, why we break it up, because they can't remember or they can't manage mentally or deal with 5 different stages in a project. Do this, then do that, then make that, then fold this, then finish it up, right? They can't do that. But what they can do is they can say, okay, everybody do this one thing. Okay, everybody do that. Great. Okay, now everybody, let's do the next thing, right? And so on and so on. So to do it step by step, and actually, as Bernardo's just said, maintain momentum through the project and not let anyone get bogged down, then these are all great reasons why we break the project up into pieces for these younger students. Now, with these younger students, I'll just say within here, we might be talking about breaking it up into 1 to 2 steps at a time, right? So it could be, maybe it's 2 to 5 minutes of activity, right? And much, much less if they're younger. Actually, it might only be 30 seconds of activity if you're 3 years old, right? But it's in little pieces for the students to do, okay? Now, if we go to students who are a little bit older, and so here I'm going to say like 8 to 12, right? Let's finish off the young learner age range here. What are the reasons why it's good for them to have a project broken up into stages? Now, they have a longer attention span, right? They're less likely to be confused, probably. They can concentrate a bit better. But what else? What are some of the other reasons here? Okay, so to get involved, right? Okay, to communicate, right? More communication. For these older students, they can probably handle more communication. Sharing ideas, that's a good one because you may be doing it in groups, right? Foster creativity. Yeah, if you give people a little bit more time to think, then they can be a little bit more creative, right? That's good. Yeah, maybe you're dealing with mixed abilities. That's true. Okay, and we need to manage abilities in a classroom. That's great. To develop leadership. Nice. And autonomy. There we go. What else have we got here? Yeah, a bit of time to process the information. Yeah, they might need to take some time to do something like that. To analyze, nice, I like that one. Okay, and also kind of the other side of analyze, maybe they do something, but then they're going to edit. It's not always writing, right? But maybe they do something and they want to change it, right? So editing through their project, yeah, these are all great reasons as well, right? And so for these older students, we might be doing it in bigger blocks. Like we might be giving these students, maybe we're giving them 2 to 4 steps, and maybe we're working in kind of 5 to 15 minute kind of blocks on a project because they can handle more, but we still are going to break that larger project up into pieces to go through with, right? Okay, so yeah, so the idea is, generally speaking, we do want to break it up, but generally speaking, we want to try and complete one stage before we move on to the next stage, right? So we really don't want anyone to get left behind. If you've got students who are far ahead, maybe for those advanced students, right? We can say, if you're an advanced student, it's just what more can you add at the stage we are already doing? Okay, so can you add more words to the stage we're already doing? Can you add more detail to the stage we're already doing? Can you add more quality to the stage we're already doing, right? So try and keep everybody on the same stage to manage, right? But for your advanced students, you can ask them to do a little bit more and achieve a higher level of ability in that particular stage. Okay, great. Okay, so I hope that's useful in terms of thinking about multiple stages, right? Now, the other one is group work, okay? Obviously, different learners have different abilities to do group work based on their age. At what sort of age, in the chat box really quickly, at what sort of age do you think we can start getting students to work in pairs? Okay, remember, I'm talking today about students anywhere from 3 to 12. Okay, what age can I start them working in pairs? And what stage can I get them to work in groups where maybe you've got 3 or 4 or 5 students? What do you think? So let's just do a quick think about this one. Pairs and a group kind of 3 to 5 years old. What do we think here? Yeah, so maybe 3 years old in pairs, but it might have to be really simple tasks, right? Might have to be super simple tasks, right? Some other people are saying maybe as late as 5. Some people are saying 7, right? It does depend. I would go for the upper end of kindergarten myself, right? So I maybe personally, I'd be more like 5 years old is a good time to do more pair work, because the students can control their emotions a little bit. I can maybe do a simple activity with pairs when they're 3, but yeah, personally, I'd favor perhaps more like 5, right? And then groups, yeah, usually when you get into elementary school. So if your groups are 3 to 5 people, then maybe 6, 7 years old and beyond that, you can get people working in groups. But again, it's working in a group is a project and a learning process all of its own, right? We'll talk about that a little bit later as well. But yeah, bigger groups, it does depend a lot on the age. It depends on the activity. Thank you, Sarah, for pointing those points out. It depends on the emotional state of the child and the class, right? It depends on a lot of different things, okay? But just have a think about it. Now, what about if we're doing the pros and cons of group work and solo work? So we've got some students who can work in groups, and now all we're doing is we're comparing, is it better to have them work as a group? Is it better to have them work solo on this particular project? So let's see, what are some pros and cons of group projects and solo work, individual projects? In the chat box, let's have a few ideas and notes here. What do you think? Yeah. Group could, yeah, so a pro here could be we generate more ideas. That's true. Okay. Responsibility, actually, you could say that works both ways, because you can have responsibility, being responsible for your part in the group or being responsible for the whole project. For me, that kind of crosses both lines, right? Let's see, lots of things coming in the chat box. I'm missing some. They have different ideas they can share. They can share personal experiences. They can learn to accept other ideas. Okay, so I'll write that one down. That's a good one. Accept other ideas. Yeah, there's a thing here about social skills. Okay, developing social skills in the group. I saw someone earlier, I think someone wrote something about balancing abilities in a group, which is a good one as well. Some people are good at coloring, some people are better at writing, et cetera, right? If those are skills that are in your project, right? Balancing abilities. Learning to listen, yeah, so that's kind of a social skill, right? Group creativity. Solo, yeah, it's more visible. Maybe it's you own it, right? And you have a very visible understanding of what's going on for that student. Yeah, maybe group is the interaction. Yeah, that goes with social skills. Solo, yeah, it could be a challenge. That's a good one. Maybe you're not so good at some different things, but you've got to challenge yourself and try it all. Okay, controlling the time. That can be, for the teacher, that can be a good one. It's easier to control the time probably with a solo project. Independency, autonomy, yeah. Those are all good ones. More dynamic, yeah, so there's more, it's more dynamic over here. Things can change and go on, okay. They share with each other, great. What about any cons? Have we got any cons, any problems with group projects and solo projects? Yeah, it could be, maybe you get distractions. So let's put some cons here. So it could be distractions. One does all the work, yeah, that often happens, right? One person feels more inspired they care about the result more, so they put a lot more work into it. That's true. Yeah. Introverted students. Yeah. So how do we deal with introverted students? How do we engage them? Right? I can't spell. Engaging. Okay. How do we engage them? They couldn't agree on something. Yeah. So getting agreement. Okay. So that gets into the whole negotiation thing, which really ties back to their social skills as well, right? Yeah. All students have a chance to participate. I guess that's with a pro over here is everybody's doing something, right? Everyone is working. Okay. Some people also might say that assessment, depending on what you're trying to assess, can be more difficult with a group project because you don't know who did which bits so easily. Right? So, you know, if you've got Bill and Sally and Tom, and maybe Tom doesn't do any writing in the project, then that means you can't assess Tom's writing ability through the project, right? Yeah, so with a solo one, a con might be too much pressure. That's true. Yeah. So you can see there's a lot of things we need to think about with these things, but there are good benefits to doing group work in projects, right? And it's something to consider with all of your projects. Okay, great. And that's a really good list. I can see you've got a lot more in the chat box. So let me just keep going through here, and you can see the chat, a few other ideas as well. Okay. Let's have a look at a quick example of a group project. And I'm using this one with students who are a little bit older. This is from Our World program, Level 3. And Unit 1 is about exciting sports. And the project in this one is for the students to plan an extreme sports camp, okay? Because the whole unit has been about sports and exciting sports like canoeing and paragliding and things like this, okay? And so what they do in this project is it tells them straight up front here, it says work in groups, right? Okay, this is not a solo project. You're going to work in a group. And they're going to develop some ideas around, okay, what's the name of our camp? Where is it? Which sports are included? What type of equipment do we need, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what they have to do over here, it says make a brochure or a web page, okay, about the camp and write pieces and add in photos and a map and so on and so on. Okay, so this is a really good one to break up into pieces, and it's probably very unrealistic in my opinion. It's unrealistic to try and do this in one class. So I'm not even going to try and do it in one class. I'm going to break it up over multiple classes. I'm putting it into stages, right? Okay, so let's take a look at what I might do with this one. So if I'm doing it over several classes, in my first class, the first step is probably, let's make the groups, right? We have to decide on the groups, try and however we're going to do that. Are we going to randomly assign people? You can work with your friends. Is the teacher going to choose? So I know the abilities are well balanced, okay? So we form groups, and then probably we're going to get those groups starting to build their plan, right, through that word web of each of those different things we saw on the last page, okay? And then probably also get them to decide who's going to work on each piece. So divide the responsibilities up, get them to decide that. And then for homework, they can start searching up their ideas, okay, about what they're going to put together. So you can see all of this is in the first class. I've got a lot of little tasks here that we're all going to do to get working on this project, okay? Now in the second class, probably I give each person some time to write their part. This might be a little bit more solo, but maybe they're collaborating with ideas, but individually they're writing their pieces. So this might be something where I model the writing that the students should kind of follow for their piece. You know, it's like, make sure you have a title, make sure you have a topic sentence, let's everybody write at least 4 sentences, let's try and use some adjectives, et cetera, okay? So gonna get everybody to do those things and probably finish it off for homework, right? That might be how I get everybody to the end of that stage. I say, make sure you finish this for homework, okay? Class 3, now we can edit because it's not going to be perfect, right? Let's edit it up. Maybe I want students to add more adjectives and adverbs if I'm focusing on that. Maybe I want students to add more sentences, okay? Trying to add a little bit more detail, okay? And then maybe we begin the layout, okay? Is it a physical layout on a brochure or is it an electronic layout on a website? How are we going to do that, right? And then maybe in the last class, we just get everybody to complete everything and make sure everybody's done by the end of class 4. And then perhaps class 5, it's presentation, and everybody introduces their extreme sports camp to everybody else in class. Okay, so you can see in the first part, it's more of a planning activity. Then I've got some writing going on down here, maybe some editing and design work, some final like quality checking, and then here we're going to have probably like speaking tasks built into this project. Okay, so lots of different things going on in here. I think you can see how this breaks up over several classes. Okay, as a group. As an example, this is not a project page. This is actually a real campsite. I found out the web address for Camp Lockerhand here is at the top of the page. But I thought this is a good example of a model that I might show to my students and say, look, I want you guys to make something like this, okay? And we're in groups of 5. So your job is each person is going to make 2 things, right? So maybe Tom, you're going to do bungee and you're going to do paintball, right? And Sarah, we're going to get you to do dirt bikes and maybe not mountain biking. That's too similar. What about skate park, right? And so we can divide these things up amongst the students, and then everybody has their own task within the project and they're contributing to the bigger group, okay? So I thought this was just a nice image that I could perhaps share with students to say, look, this is what I want you to try and achieve by the end, give them a model or a goal to go towards. Okay, good. So any questions on that? We're pretty happy about group work and multiple stages. Think we're good? No comments in the chat box, so I'm going to keep going. Okay. Good job. We're all fine here. Good job. Great. Okay, nice to know. Okay. Okay, so the next one, number 2, substituting materials. Substituting materials. We all have those times where the materials are perhaps not available, right? If we're in a school, I've worked in schools before where our materials budget was essentially non-existent. The teachers kind of choosing and providing things, sometimes from their own pocket. That happens, right? But also I'm thinking about in today's environment where maybe we're trying to do some sort of at-home project, right? We're relying on materials coming from their home, okay? Because we're doing an online class, or maybe we're a blended class where maybe we're only seeing the students once a week and our other days are at home because of capacity or restriction issues and how we're teaching at the moment, right? So for this kind of thing, I'm thinking, especially with online, how can we deal with that if we're kind of got students at home, okay? So we need to plan substitute materials as part of the process of teaching a particular project, okay? Always think ahead. What are problems am I going to run into in terms of materials, okay? So here's an example of a little project. Now, this is for very young learners. This project is actually for students who are 3 years old, okay? They are not going to be doing this alone. If it was in a face-to-face classroom, they have teachers' assistants for some parts of the project, right? If it's a home project, I'm thinking we're teaching these kids, through some sort of online class like this, then now it's the parent who's assisting their child, okay, or some other caregiver at home who's assisting the child with this project, okay? And we need to think about the materials, okay? So I think you can see this is like a pencil holder, okay? And how's this one made? Let's look at the kind of the steps. So this one uses some sort of carton. This looks like a juice or a milk carton here, or a tea carton or something like that, cardboard, right? And an adult is going to have to cut the top off because you're not going to expect a 3-year-old kid to use scissors, right? That would be super dangerous. So an adult is going to do that stage. And then we're going to tear up pieces of paper and stick them on, okay? And then we're going to end up with the final product. So it's a pretty simple little project, but remember the kids are 3, right? Don't have a lot of abilities here. My question is, if I go back to this step, why are we tearing up pieces of paper? Why am I tearing pieces of paper here? Why am I not cutting them with scissors? Why am I tearing? In the chat box, why do you think I'm tearing pieces of paper in this project? Any ideas? Safety, yes. Excuse me. They cannot cut by themselves. They don't have the motor skills. Exactly. A 3-year-old student generally speaking, cannot coordinate themselves to use scissors, right? Yeah, so what we do instead is we get them to tear. That means they can do it, right? And actually this action of taking something and tearing it is actually a really good fine motor skill activity for a 3-year-old student. And the quality of tearing doesn't really matter. So if they end up with big bits and little bits and crazy bits, it's all good, right? So for this kind of student, 3-year-old student, it's a really good activity for development, as well as being very achievable, and the quality is not going to matter, right? It doesn't matter if it looks ugly. All torn looks ugly, okay? And it's fun, yes, as Andrea says. Okay, so that's why we're tearing for this project, okay? And eventually we get the product, right? So the thing with this, there's not many materials, but let's think about what materials we can substitute. So here, the 4 basic materials are milk carton, glue, scraps of paper, and you can see I've got colored post-it notes here as my example, and pencils and crayons, which is just to put in at the end, right? Or maybe you're going to try and get them to color as well. So let's see, what substitutes can we have for some of these things? So let's start quickly. Let's do milk carton. If I don't have a milk carton, what else can I use? What else can I use instead of a milk carton? Let's do one at a time, okay? So let's just focus on milk carton for a moment. A paper roll, okay, good. That's one. A cardboard box, right? So cardboard box, yeah, if it's the right size, that would work. A shoe box, so that's a nice one. I didn't think of a shoe box. Cereal box, yeah, good. Good, a tissue box, nice. What if it's not something made of card? Because all of these things are made of card at the moment. There we go, plastic bottle, there's a good one. So you get something like a juice container, a plastic bottle, something like that, nice one. Oh, there we go, a Pringles thing, a Pringles can. Great, that's a good one. We're not supporting Pringles here. Any sort of can of that shape would do the job. Yogurt bottle, good. Okay, so tons of different things we can do there, right? All of those things, they're a basic container where we can cut the top off and they'll give us the basic foundation of what we want to do. Nice one, good one. Okay, let's go down to glue. Now, there's probably not a whole lot of options here, but let's say this is like the white kind of PVA glue, polyvinyl acetate glue, right? That's kind of the basic glue we're talking about here. What else can we use? Tape, good. Flour and water, yes, you can make flour and water paste, okay? That works as well. Silicone, yeah, we use double-sided tape. Double-sided tape. Silicone sealer, right? I mean, you're getting serious there. Someone's into home improvement. Silicone sealer. Good. Clay, yes, you could use clay, although that would be a little tricky, but you could use clay. Plasticine, yeah, okay. Those things probably aren't going to hold. Plasticine, how do you spell it? Those things probably aren't going to hold as well, clay and plasticine, but they might be effective. There is a material that's known by a brand name where I come from, Blue Tack. It's the blue stuff that you use to stick posters on the wall, right? Or sometimes it's yellow, depending on what country you come from. So you can use that kind of stuff as well. I call it Blue Tack because where I come from, it's blue, and that's the brand name. But yeah, that kind of stuff you use to put posters on the wall, that would probably work. It's kind of like clay or plasticine, right? Yeah, good one. Okay, now scraps of colored paper. Someone already said earlier in the chat box, we could use magazines and just basically take the photos and color bits out of the magazines, right? Yep. Post-its, yeah, we've already got post-its up here. Newspaper, yep. Maybe we want to find the colored advertisement pages from that. Oh, what's that one? I don't know this one. Is this right? Foamy? Do you mean pieces of colored foam or something like that? I think that's what you mean, right? Cloth, yes, you could use cloth. Foley, yep. Stickers, yeah, we could just do the whole thing with stickers, although stickers cost money, whereas some of these other things don't cost money. China paper, yeah, that's the type of paper you use for origami or the decorative kind of snowflakey or other design kind of paper. Yeah, there's lots of things like that. Yep. Leaves, oh, these are a great one. If you want to make a nature one, yeah, use leaves, that's cool. Right, construction paper, yeah, so old notebooks, wool, yeah, there's another good one for natural materials. Nice, right? I guess if you wanted to, you could even use bark. If you're using bark, then you might need your silicone sealer to make the thing stick on, or a glue gun, right? But yeah, you could do lots of, yeah, dried flowers. There's another great one, right? Tons of good ones there, yeah? Okay, and then pencils and crayons. What else can we put in here? So, you know, if the kids, I don't have a lot of pencils, I don't have a lot of crayons, what else can I put in my container, right? Highlighters, yeah, pens, right? What else? Markers, paint brushes, yeah, brushes, cool. Lots of different things. Stamps, yeah, I could just use it as a start. I could put my eraser in there, put my stamps in there. Could kind of like almost like a pencil box with no lid, right? Yeah, you could do all sorts of things. But the point is here, there are a lot of materials that give options, especially if they're in the home environment. And you might have parents who are creative and quick on their feet, and they know what they can do to substitute for something. Oh, let's use this instead. But it's sometimes better if the teacher up front can say, look, you've got a lot of options here. Just find any of these things and it'll be fine, right? So lots of different things you could do with that. Oh, chalk. Ah, there's a good one. If mum is a teacher, Grisella, is your mom? Okay, I'm going to put that one down as well. Nice job. Okay. Okay, so then, yeah, so thinking about how we manage communicating about materials if we're like take home. The other one you could do with this is if you're trying to talk to your supervisor or manager at school to say, these are materials I want to get. You could do exactly the same thing. To say, these are materials I want for my project, is you can just write it, right? So here's a parent letter that I might send to my parents to say, hey, next week or this week on Friday, we're going to be making a pencil holder. So here's an example picture, okay? To help, what you need to do is you need to get one of these things and you need some of this stuff, right? And you need some of this and you need a few of these, right? And then if you have questions, then email me and talk to me and let me know, right? But these are the things, please get these ready and then you'll be ready and your child will be ready for the class when we do it, say on Friday, okay? So communicating up front about what you need, or if you're trying to do this at your school, then maybe this is not to your parents, maybe this is to your manager to say, can we please get these things for my project for later this week, okay? Maybe for some of these things like milk cartons, it's just collecting, everybody in the school's collecting their milk cartons this week so that on Friday I can use them for my project, right? I'm sure you do those kinds of things already, right? But yeah, this is one way to manage substituting different materials into your project. Okay, all good? Okay, so time to move on to number 3. Okay, number 3 is process versus product. Same skills, different product. Okay, so I have a question for you. Which is more important, the process or the product? Now, let me just quickly define. The process is the skills in completing the project. The product is the final object, okay? And everybody's putting stuff in the chat box and almost everybody is saying the process. The process, the process, the process, process. No one is saying product. Okay, that both says Anna. Okay, there we go. The journey is more important than the destination. Okay, IMO both, says Evelyn. Okay, I'm of the opinion that while process is really, really important, we can aim to have both. Okay, we can aim to have a good looking product or a fine product at the end, as well as teaching kids valuable skills along the way. Okay, so I'm of the view, yes, process is really important. We're never forgetting process, but let's try and have a good product as well. Okay, because that can, especially for younger learners, that's what the parents often see, right? And if it looks good, then they usually feel a bit better. Okay, cool. Now, I had a little star on the last page next to product. Not all projects have a product, okay? Because a product, you're probably thinking something physical, right? Like a pencil box, right? But non-product projects are still really valuable, okay? We can still show learning and outcomes, which is the point of a project. When we don't have a product, we still have a destination, but it's not something physical for the students, right? Sometimes the end point is a change in behavior or a new skill demonstrated. Okay, that's what I mean by something that is not a product. okay? But it's still an endpoint, right? Okay, so what sort of examples can you think of for this kind of project where we don't have something physical at the end of it, but it's still a project. It still happened in stages. It still had a learning outcome that moves us forward, right? What do you think? Presentation skills, yeah, there's one. Okay, so if we're doing some sort of presentation, okay, that could be one. Role play, yep. So actually any type of acting, right? If you're putting on a stage show, that is basically a project, right? Yeah. Videos talking about places, yeah. So you might be making a video. Now the video is a product, right? But it's not so physical. It's kind of digital. But yeah, it could be making a video. Yeah, sure, that works. Dramatization, yeah. Description, podcast. Developing a social skill, says Evelyn. That's a nice one. So I'm going to give you an example of that in a minute, right? Developing a social skill, yeah. Doing an interview, nice. Yeah, being able to conduct an interview, right? That could be an example. Okay, so the project is building up my interview questions and then maybe practicing it, right? Yeah. A portfolio, yeah. So Deborah, a portfolio often would actually be pieces of physical work, right? I know that it doesn't have to be. So sometimes you can have a portfolio that doesn't have particular physical products in as well, okay? Yeah. Now, I'm going to give you a quick example because I think it was Evelyn said about developing a social skill. I'm going to give you a really quick example of a non-product project that I saw another teacher do. I haven't done this one with my own students, but I've seen another teacher do this. With his younger students, they would often, like when they had a runny nose, they would just be like this, right? And they're just like, yeah, right? It's just yuck, okay? And he was like, right. Project, right? He's like, we are all going to learn how to deal with runny noses, right? And so what he did was basically, his materials was basically just a box of tissues, right? And with all of the students, it's like, right, this is how we blow our nose, right? And he was teaching the students, like, how do you blow your nose? The kids are like 5, right? How do you blow your nose, right? And then he's like, what do you do with the tissues afterwards? Okay, everybody has to put them in the bin, right? And it's like, what is this process I need to go through? How many tissues do I use? I blow, you know, what do I do with it afterwards? And so he turned it into this project, and he had games and activities where the students are, okay, let's blow your nose. Let's everybody check everybody's nose. Does anyone see anybody's nose that's still running? Okay, blow again, right? And then, okay, everybody line up, blow your nose, put it in the trash, blow your nose, put it in the trash, blow your nose, put it in the trash, right? So he's using this as a kind of a project to teach the kids the social behavior of look after yourself, blow your nose, and don't make a mess, right? So this is an example of how you develop some sort of skill that's not really a product, but it can still be a bit of a project for the kids, okay, depending on their age, right? Nice one. Okay, so let's take a look down at an example. So here's a project that's in the book, okay? Again, this is a younger learner project from Welcome to Our World. And I think this one is for kids who are 4, that might be 4 years old. Now, what are the skills that are involved in this project that you can see? What skills do we have here? What skills do we have? Okay, kinesthetic. So we got like motor skills. Let's just say motor skills on that one, right? Because it's easier for me to write. Okay. Math. Yep. So math. Let's be more specific. There's some sort of counting going on in here. Yep. Yeah, we can involve some speaking in there for sure, right? Okay, we can definitely do that. Visuals, yeah. So maybe it's like there's the coloring aspect here, some sort of spatial. Yeah, when we say spatial and visual, it's a little bit big. I kind of want to get down to the more nitty gritty. Yeah, a little bit of artistic skills, sure. Artistic skills, good. Yeah. Coordination, yes, which is a motor skill thing. Okay. Relating points to numbers, that's true, right? So the visual representation of other numbers. Another one with this, I would say, is ordering, sequencing, right? We have to get the order right for these different numbers, right? Okay, so there's a few different skills here, okay? Now, this is one particular project, right? Now, you can see that this project involves pegs, clothing pegs, right? That you like put on a clothesline. Now, what if you don't have those? Or what if you want to do the project a little differently, but you want to focus on this kind of skills? Okay, what do we do with that? So what I'm going to show you now is some other examples of other projects that potentially use the same skills. Okay, so let's take a look at this one. So here we are painting something, and then we are taping down some, we'll call them pipe cleaners where I come from. Okay, and then we're threading some beads, and then we're taping again. And what's this thing here? What's the name for that thing? So that's abacus, right? Which is a counting tool, a calculation tool, okay? Yeah, abaco, yeah, right? Okay, very cool. So does that thing use the same kind of skills? So if I go back, let me go back to here. So did it use motor skills? I think it did, right? Yeah, because we're taping and we're threading, and that's coordination as well, right? There's some artistic in that, right? Okay, there's like ordering, getting the colors and stuff sorted out. There's math. We've got to count the right number of beads, and there's ordering, right? Because you can see here, if I go back down, right, we've got to get the blues and the greens, we need 5 of each in the right order, right? Okay, so that's the same kind of project, right? Or same skills rather, but a very different kind of product, right? Yeah, okay. What about this one? Have a look at this one. So what are we doing here? What are they? Pieces of foam by the looks of it that we're gluing. Okay, and then we're stacking them up, and we're making some sort of pyramid, and then we're using sand to create some sort of finished product here, right? Maybe we sand or sawdust or something like that, right? Did that use the same kind of skills? Did we have motor skills there? Yeah, I think we do, because it's like the stacking, right? And the ordering of things. There's counting, right? So we've got to count out how many we need, perhaps. There's a bit of artistic and getting it looking good, right? We could definitely use some speaking with that as well, right? This one might be for students who are a little bit older, right? Maybe more like 5 years old, 6 years old. Maybe we're tying that in with a history. Maybe we're looking at history like Aztec or Mayan or Egyptian pyramids, and then we're looking at, okay, let's make our own, right? So yeah, could tie in with a lot of things there. Here's another one. This is for even older students. You can see here these students are maybe 6 or 7, maybe even older. So they're making a robot, and you can see down here that they're randomly generating numbers with a dice, and then using those numbers to decide how many body parts their robot has. So you can see here on this one, the robot has 5 eyes. So when they rolled the dice for eyes, they must have gotten 5, right? And they've made this crazy robot, right? So again, there's counting, there's physical, there's artistic, there's motor skills appropriate to the level of the students with lots of cutting and perhaps coloring. So yeah, lots of different things that we can do in these projects to tackle the same kind of skills with another type of project. Okay, and all of these, depending on how your students go, will create a very different product that you can talk about, that you can show off. Here we've got a group work project as well. So lots of different things we can do with that, right? Okay, nice. Okay, so let's move on. We've got one more point left to cover, and that is adding more language use. Yeah, talking about shapes here. Yeah, definitely we can do that as well, right? Okay, so adding more language use to a project. Okay, so let's take a quick look at this one. As I mentioned earlier, we're primarily talking about teaching English, and the projects are a vehicle for that, right? The students get more practice means that they are building better ability, right? If you've heard me talk about this idea before, we often need to practice something like 100 times or more until we build an ability that will last us for our lifetime. That's why my Chinese Mandarin is not so good, because I don't practice enough, right? Living here in Taipei, I don't practice my Mandarin enough. But anyway, but how do we add more language use to a project, right? So let's take a quick look at a project, and we're going to think specifically about this project. What can we do with it, right? Okay, so this is the project. This one is a non-product project. It's a taste day, right? And we're going to be tasting different things and seeing if we can identify the food, right? What does it taste like? What do I think it is, right? Okay, so this is an interesting one. But when you look in the bottom corner here, you can see that the things we're talking about here, it's talking about naming foods, it's talking about quantity, and my favorites. But then over here, we're talking about, when we're speaking, it's like it's soft, it's salty, it's spicy. That doesn't quite match with the list of things that are here at the bottom of the page, right? So how does this work? Okay, so let me walk you through the earlier part of the unit real quick. So in the beginning of this unit, this is the kind of vocabulary we're learning. We're learning about more foods than we've already learned about, but also the counting words that go with those foods, right? So a glass of juice, a can of soda, a bowl of sugar, et cetera, okay? Right? Then we're doing the any, some, many, this kind of a few, a little. We're doing this type of grammar, which I'm sure you're familiar with, right? So this is the kind of language that the students are learning in this particular unit, okay? Now, about 2 units earlier, this is the language we learned. So for this project, this language is review. We already know this. That's why we're incorporating it into the project, right? So these are the taste words that we know, okay? And so now this is the project that we're doing, okay? So if we look at the basic steps, bring in different kinds of food, okay? There's not much language involved in that, I guess. Put on a blindfold and taste the food, okay? We're still not really using language. Okay, interview your partner. Okay, there's a speaking and writing task and a listening task. And then take turns. Okay, so it seems our language use here mainly is talking with my partner, okay, and writing down what they say, okay? Now, the question is, how can I add language to this? So let's think about what ways can I incorporate more language into this project? So in the chat box, what ways can you think of to add more language to this particular project where, okay, expressing opinions, good one, right? Okay, so I like, I don't like, okay, so we can express an opinion, okay, so like, don't like, I love it, I hate it, right? Okay, we could introduce slang, okay, we could put there as well. They describe the flavor, okay. Maybe it tastes like, right? Oh, it kind of tastes like potato chips. It kind of tastes like candy, right? Okay. Yeah, we could maybe teach the kids. So Sarah, you said description there. So generally speaking for this, I think we're going to be teaching more adjectives, right? To describe the food that we're tasting, right? Okay. Yeah, we could. So here the Daniela's saying we could make a post. Yeah, so here we've got an interview form, right? But maybe what we could do is we could make some sort of poster. Maybe we make a bar chart or a graphic organizer at the end, and we say, okay, you know, we've got our different foods, okay, down here, our different types of food, and up here is how many students liked it, and we're making a bar chart based on what people like. That could be a good way to kind of wrap up the whole thing at the end, right? Yeah. And that could become a poster, great. Yeah, we can make video, yes. Okay, now little story, I've actually done this. I actually was a student for this in a demonstration one time where a teacher was getting students to taste unusual things without knowing what they were, like with a blindfold, just like this. But the teacher was recording their reaction to the food, like on video. And then part of the project was talking about the person's reaction, okay? So I got some stuff which is called nador, right? Which is like a really, what is it? I guess it's like kind of a spicy Asian bean. It's kind of, it tastes weird and it's really sticky. And so this was what I got in the demonstration. And so it's like, without looking at it, I put it in my mouth and my immediate reaction was like, oh, right? It wasn't like, right? It was just like, oh, that's interesting. But the point of the video project was look at the facial expression and describe the reaction the person has to eating this type of food. So we could do that, right? It was a great one that this teacher was doing, right? Yeah. Okay, they can report what their partner says. Yeah, so it could be student talk about other student, right? So it's kind of a report back that way as well. Yeah, body language, right? Yeah, talking about the body language. That's a little bit what I just described. I was talking about facial expressions, but it could be other body language as well. right? Size, shape, and color, yeah, we could talk about those things. Cool. So maybe we're distinguishing the really spicy peppers versus the not so spicy ones, right? Yeah, lots of different things. Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways we can add more language to this, right? Okay. Excuse me, I've got the hiccups. By adding adjectives, by describing, by interpreting other types of non-verbal communication, by making bar charts, by lots of different things we can do, right? So always think about how you add more language to a project, right? Because the more you're doing, the more the kids are practicing, the better they're getting at using that language, right? Nice. Okay, so I'm about out of time, so let's wrap this up here. Okay, so the 4 things we talked about today, just to quickly review: multiple stages in group work, right? Break it down into pieces and think about how you organize your groups for social learning and those other benefits that kids get out of group work. Don't always want to do groups, but they can be really beneficial, okay? Substituting materials, especially if it's a home project where the student, you're relying on the materials coming from home, make sure you plan out different substitutes so you give them lots of options, okay? Everyone can be successful then. Process versus product. Sometimes this is a nice project. I want to use those skills, but maybe I want to do it in a different way. So think about that one too, okay? And finally, adding lots of language, right? Making sure that kids are practicing a lot of language, because at the end of the day, generally speaking, we're talking about English language learning, and that's the main target of what the project is really about at the end of the day, okay? Nice one. Okay, so time for a little bit of Q&A. We've got 5 minutes, I think. So let's see, what sort of questions do you have? You can put them in the chat box, or you can use the Q&A function in Zoom. You can type your questions in there as well, and I'll keep my eyes open and see if we've got any questions here. Very interesting and helpful. That's nice to know, Kirby. Thank you very much. Let's see, what do we have here? No questions at the moment, Emily. Emily, you're still on mute, by the way.
Yep. Just waiting for a question to read.
Yes. I'm watching attentively. No one has questions at the moment. Yeah. That's nice to know, Sarah. If I can motivate you to try something new with a student, that's my whole point, right? Like, if I help you, I can help more kids, right? Very good. Everyone seems to have learned a lot, but no one has any questions. I'm disappointed. Come on, you guys. Where are your questions?
As Deborah says, you were so clear.
Oh, there we go.
No room for questions.
You should have questions. I don't know everything, right? We learn together. You ask questions and we learn together. Maybe we're happy for today.
I see one from Victor.
Oh, there we go. We've got one in the chat box. Carolina in the Q&A box says, are projects for older students? Yes. Yes, we can use projects with anyone. I do projects at my work. From those projects, I learn things. I'm an adult. I'm 48 almost. So I'm still learning from projects. Any of your students can learn from a project. Doesn't matter what age they are. You're going to adapt the skills. You're going to adapt your expectations. If you've got a 12-year-old versus a 15-year-old, you'll have different expectations. If you've got a 20-year-old, you'll have different expectations again. Just be clear. One thing I'd suggest, just be clear about your expectations for language versus all the other things, okay? Because a 10-year-old and a 20-year-old student may have the same language level while they have very different abilities in other areas, right? So if you've got this project for a 10-year-old and this project for a 20-year-old, the language might be the same, but the other aspects of the project could be very, very different, right? Yeah, okay. Elizabeth asks, what can we do with students who don't like to work in groups? Provide variety. Maybe in your classroom or in your situation, you decide that group work is optional. If you want to do it alone, you can. And maybe you just change the expectations, right? So it's a little bit easier if you're doing it solo, a little bit less to do, but more to do if you're in a group, right? But yeah, you can do that, right? Nice one. What else have we got? Online classes. So Tina, some of the things I mentioned today will work online as well. but maybe with an online class, you're wanting the students to do something in writing that they can then submit digitally, or they can take a photo of, right, and submit. You can still do physical projects, but maybe the students are going to make a little video about it or take photos of it afterwards because you can't physically see it. So just think about how the project still works. I think it's just how do you present it? How do you share it in a digital way since it's online? Okay, great. And DeLuca says, how do you determine if the teacher is putting kids into groups, how do you decide? As you said, sometimes I let them choose, sometimes I tell them. If you want a really neutral, random way to put kids in a group, line them up in order of height or something, and then take the first one and the last one and put them together, right? And just keep going down the line. The reason I say take the first one and the last one, if someone's taller, their physical abilities might be a bit better than the shorter one, just because of age, perhaps. And so that may benefit the group, is to have a mix of skills, perhaps, right? But that's pretty random, right? But yeah, you can do some fun things like that. Okay, cool. What else? Joe, I have to mention Joe's question. Recommend a project for an MBA class, please. Joe, we're talking about young learners today. I'm sorry. But if you want projects for that kind of thing, actually this general statement applies to any project for any age of learner. Joe, so this applies to you too. Think about what your students need to learn and what they need to practice, and give them a project which is going to make them practice those things at a level of ability a little bit higher than what they have right now. Okay, so you're scaffolding your students. You do that in any form of education, right? So for Joe, what do your students need to learn? How do you scaffold them to a higher stage? That will still work for an MBA class. I hope that helps. Good one. Okay, I think we're about out of time. Emily, do we want to run through the wrap-up slides here quickly?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, okay. So for other questions, maybe I'll try and stay online for a couple of minutes and answer some in a second. But Emily, do you want to talk about learning moments a little bit?
I'd be happy to. It's actually a great segue, as I think projects could be a really great learning moment submission. But what is Learning Moments? So if you haven't seen it already, National Geographic Learning is running a showcase where really we want to hear from you, teachers of English all over the world, and hear what you've been doing over the last several months to help engage and motivate your learner in the online or blended classroom, how you're really dealing with engagement and motivation. Do you have any teaching tips you want to share with other teachers? Do you have any projects that have worked well? Basically, it's really open. We have narrowed it down to 8 different categories that you can check out on the site. But we're asking you, and here they are right here: engaging content, interactive tasks, real life communication, project work, assessing learners, giving feedback, personalizing instruction, and building online community. But we'd love to hear from you. You can either film a video of yourself telling us what you've been doing in your classroom that's working for you, or you can write a submission and send in a photo to accompaniment. And you can actually check out the Learning Moments site now. We have all the submissions that have come in so far are all displayed there, so you can learn from each other. And at the end of the showcase, Dr. Joan King Shin and Jared Borap will be selecting a few of those learning moments to showcase in their upcoming professional development book. So there's also the possibility to be featured there too. But we'll give all attendees, or anyone who participates, I should say, a certificate, and then also a teaching online resource to download as well too. So we'd love to see your submission, and we'll be running that through the end of November. Just a quick shout out about that. You can visit the Learning Moments site that Andrew has highlighted to learn a little bit more.
Very nice.
And last but not least, as we wrap up now, I do just want to mention a few housekeeping notes. We will be sending you a certificate for joining us today, staying with us for an hour. We'll also be sending along the slides in a PDF form, and then a recording of the session as well. And one other plug, if you know any colleagues who missed the session, we will be repeating it. It will be about 12 hours from now. So we hope any of them who missed it can join us for that session. Great,
Nice.
and we
Just
hope
a
you
note as
join
well,
us again
Emily,
soon.
like you said, it'll take about 5 working days for those things to come to you. So just be patient, they will come. So probably around the 26th is Monday, right? So maybe by around then, but just be patient, they will definitely come to you. Okay.
Yeah, that's a great note. And see a few questions about the survey feedback link. We'll be sending you along to that right as soon as we end the webinar, or if you leave now. So thanks everyone for being with us. I really hope you found it useful, and we hope to see you again soon. And a big thank you to our presenter, Andrew, for a great session, super engaging.
Very good. Thank you all. And if you, I know some people still have questions, you can always post to our Facebook page and ask questions there. We'll try and get back to you that way as well with some of these questions. So yeah, but thank you all. And I think we're going to wrap up now. So take care, happy teaching, and we'll see you again soon. Yeah.
Happy teaching, everyone. And be sure to follow us. Like Andrew mentioned, we're on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. All right. Have a great rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening. Bye, all.